Jim in Jersey. What's up, Jim?
Hey, Mike, how are you tonight?
What's happening?
Good, thanks for taking the call. So before you get off the air, I always wanted to ask you one question. So I grew up in Pittsburgh, and I've seen a lot of championships over the last 40 years. I grew up watching the Steelers win in the 70s, obviously with Mario winning the 2 cups in the early 90s, and now the Penguins winning back-to-back cups last couple of years. I'm a huge hockey fan, so I'm really in my sports glory. I've always wanted to ask you, you've been covering and watching sports for so long, do you have a favorite era? You could pick any sport in any era. Do you have a favorite era of sports of all time, of all the time you've been covering and watching sports?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I never really thought about it, to be honest with you. A favorite era. I think for the station, I think those mid-'90s were really good because you had the biggest events, I think, came in that time period. You had the Rangers in 94, you had the Yankees in 96. The Rangers hadn't won forever, and the Yankees hadn't won in a generation. And so those two were very big, very, very big championships. Of course, that whole 94 spring, which was the best year of all the years that the fans had here, was no year is even comparable to 94. Having the Rangers and the Knicks play, one win it all and the other one go to the 7th game of the finals, play 49 playoff games. 49. Now, you realize if I added up how many playoff games the Knicks and Rangers have played in the last 10 years, I don't know if the number's 49. It probably isn't. I don't think it is. And that's 49 in 1 year. So there were 25 games played at Madison Square Garden. 25 playoff games played between the Knicks and Rangers at Madison Square Garden. Because the Knicks won 7 with the Pacers, then won 7 with the Rockets. The Nets went, the Rangers went 7 with the Devils, then 7 with the Canucks. So from that standpoint, those were all 7-game series all the way down the line. Remarkable year. Russell in Manhattan, what's up, Russell?
Hey, Mike, how you doing? Thanks for taking the call.
What's happening?
I just want to echo what everybody's been saying. It's been an amazing run, and
Thank you.
I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
I was going to ask a Giants question, but I actually, while I was on hold, I was thinking about Bitcoin. And I know you mentioned it. And I'm just wondering, because I was a little skeptical myself, and the more I dug into it, I've done a ton of research. And I'm just wondering, have you read the original Satoshi white paper from 2008?
God, no. Come on now. Listen. Give me a break. Alex in New Jersey. What's up, Alex?
Hey, Mike, like everyone else, thank you for everything. I've been listening loyal for 9 years, and your professionalism around the country is unmatched in sports radio.
Well, thank you.
A question about the Giants. Do you think, how did they come back from basically shoving Coughlin out the door for McAdoo, and then basically McAdoo kicking Eli out the door also?
Well, they didn't shove, to be fair, they didn't shove Coughlin out the door. I mean, no one liked Tom more than me, but Tom had 3 straight losing seasons. I mean, he knew that he needed to win. I mean, he had gone a long time since his championship. It wasn't like they booted him out the year after his second title. I mean, he went 3 straight losing seasons. That's a long time. He knew after the second year, I promise you he knew that after the second year, he had to win the third year. He knew he had to win. He knew what would happen if he didn't. Now, he still wanted to stay afterwards, but he knew what would happen if he didn't win the second year. And what he didn't like was, what he really had a problem with was, A, they didn't go outside the franchise to pick a coach, and B, that they spent $200 million on defense the next year. That bothered him. That really bothered him. Neil in Greenwich, what's up, Neil?
Hey, Mike, how are you?
Good.
Hey, listen, I've listened to you for all these 30 years, the whole Mark Mattingly thing. Which
yes,
was
that was one of the first things. Maybe the first thing, as a matter of fact.
I have a memory which you haven't brought up, and it proves how long I've been listening to it. And I'm 43, so I've been listening since I was a young teenager. But I remember when you were on Imus, I think it was 88, and he was giving you a hard time. And you earned his respect because you actually called the Final Four that year. You named those 4 teams. That's when I first actually remember paying attention to you. I was probably 13 or 14 years old, something like that.
Well, but the real thing was that it wasn't picking the Duke or picking the other teams. It was picking Seton Hall, and they went to the championship game and then lost the heartbreaker, as we know. But that was really it. It was the whole Seton Hall thing, which got a ton of national attention and got me just an incredible amount of attention. I mean, I went to the Final Four that year. and I was working the Final Four that year, and the fans were like holding up, cars to me and sending me cars in the mail and all this different stuff. That was crazy. That got in Time magazine. I mean, that was crazy. So I mean, it was a fun time for the station. The station was just getting going, and it's something that really just took off between Imus' show and my own and my what we were doing. It really went crazy. It really did. So that got so much attention. It was remarkable. It really was. Patty in Massapequa, what's up, Patty?
How are you, Michael?
Good.
How you doing?
Good. What's happening, Patty?
It's been a fun, good 30 years.
Thank you, dear.
I was thinking the other day, my kids knew your jingle before they knew Sesame Street song, and that's the damn truth. And I always remember the question you gave one year before the Internet with the rigging. It's the 99 chip. Never forgot that one either. And another one I always stump people with is the horse, the Godfather horse name. Cartoon. You always said,
that's right, cartoon.
That wins so many contests for me, Mike.
Exactly
I have no
right.
idea.
Patty, cartoon is right. Absolutely.
You put so much knowledge into my little brain that anything you said, I took notes down.
Thank you. And your Mets, every time I hear your voice, I think of the Mets. So,
you always had some good interviews with Bobby V, too.
Yeah, listen.
Omar, Bobby V, always good.
Bobby and Omar are going to come down to the show next week. They both agree. They both wanted to come down to the thing when we go there. Omar's coming. Omar called me. He's coming down to the show. Bobby V's coming down to the show because he's still in Connecticut. So we got a bunch of guests. Some guests coming down now. A lot of them be on the phone, but some are coming down to the Paley Center. So Bobby V's coming. Omar's coming. As a matter of fact, there'll be some other guys too coming. But we'll tell you as we get closer to the show on Thursday. But those two I know are coming. As a matter of fact, Ed in Connecticut. What's up, Ed?
Hey, Mike, since we're waxing poetic in the past and this and that, and you're my age, I'm going to give you the all-time. And back in the day, we used to argue about this as kids because we're about the same age. The all-time worst catcher yet loved for the New York Yankees was Jake Gibbs. Agreed or not?
Worst.
I'm going to go with position.
I don't know if he was the worst catcher. I mean, he wasn't good, but I don't know if he was the worst.
Third base. How about this name?
Rich McKinney. Oh, see, he wasn't a bad player though.
Okay, now shortstop. There's a debate: Gene Michael or Tommy Trash.
For what?
Loved yet on horrible teams and horrible players.
Horrible teams, but not horrible. Tom Trash wasn't a horrible player.
All right, our second baseman, he's the MVP, Horace Clarke.
Well, he's the face of that era. That's why.
Right. On first base, got to be Pepe, no? Joe Pepe.
Well, but Pepe was a good player. I mean,
I know, but what I'm saying, bad. I mean, but overall, as like they say now, at the end of the day, it was all negative, but they were loved in the outfield. Do you remember this name? Steve Whitaker.
Sure, very well. There were about a bunch of ex-Mantle guys. Whitaker, Roger Repose, Mike Hegan was a guy who came up and was a good fielding first baseman, but also played the outfield. Jim Hegan's son. Whitaker, you mentioned. Bill Robinson, who came over from the International League in the Clete Boyer trade and was supposed to be the next great player. Didn't play well for the Yankees, then played well in the National League as a hitter for the Phillies and the Pirates. Bill Robinson. That year in the International League, there were three really good players. Mike Epstein, Reggie Smith, and Bill Robinson. Those were the three big players. But the guys who were the next Mantles were Roger Repose, Steve Whitaker, Bill Robinson, Mike Hegan was going to be a big Yankee too, but he never was a hitter. He was as much a first baseman as he was an outfielder, and that was the group. And then, of course, Mercer, who turned out to be a good player. Who actually turned out to be a good. Senate has enough votes to pass government funding bills, so they will not be shutting down the government, which is nice. A nice thing to always know, that you're not going to shut down the government. One more, and then we'll take a break. Mark in Morristown. What's up, Mark?
Hey, Mike. How you doing?
Good. What's happening?
Hey, I had a quick story for you about Joe DiMaggio. I was wondering if so when my father was younger, I was a kid, he was meeting some people out for work. And it was 1986, and as he was getting out to the restaurant, one of the guys he was with was actually coming from a World Series game, and he had the program. As they walked in, they saw Joe DiMaggio sitting in there. He goes over to the front desk, and he asks him to make a copy of an article from the program from 1986 World Series that was Joe DiMaggio, MVP from 1956, his 30-year anniversary. So he goes over, gets a copy of it, goes over to the table and asks Joe DiMaggio if he can have an autograph. Now, Joe DiMaggio, as you know, was not a very personable guy.
I'm listening.
He says, okay. I'll sign our, what are you on, a napkin or something? So he goes, no. So he takes out a copy of an article of his 1956 MVP from the World Series.
That was Mickey
Mantle.
Mantle.
And Joe DiMaggio he's amazed, you know? He's like, oh my God, how the hell do you have this? So he signs it and he says, okay, great, thanks. And he says, do me a favor. Just don't let anyone else know I'm here. He goes back to the table. He's like, oh my God. Tells everyone, he's like, you wouldn't believe this. I just got Joe DiMaggio's autograph. He's sitting right over there. Tells everybody at the table. But,
Well, listen, at least he signed it, number one. But number two, Joe DiMaggio wasn't the MVP in 56. He retired in 51. The guy who was the MVP in 56 was Mantle. He had won the Triple Crown. I thought the story was going to be that Joe didn't want to sign Mickey Mantle's MVP season. I mean, that was they didn't love each other. But Joe retired in 51. So I don't know what year it was, but whatever year, he did sign it, I guess, because he and Mickey didn't love each other, as you know. Well, it wasn't Mickey's fault. It was Joe's fault. Joe wasn't. Listen, it also was Casey. Casey kind of stuck it to DiMaggio with Mantle, so that kind of annoyed DiMaggio. That's a long story, though. Back after this.